everyone, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing? My name is Shandean. If this is the very first video that you are seeing of mine, I migrated from Jamaica with my family to Canada a few years ago, and I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a writer, I'm a lifestyle creator, and I am also a communications practitioner. So along this journey, this isn't an immigration channel, but I like to share pieces of my immigration journey that may be useful to people who are going through the process currently, or looking to be going through that process soon. So I wanted to talk today about one of those things that are crucial to the process of immigration, and I think that this information is often not provided in the correct context for new immigrants, and so I'm hoping that this video will be enlightening for some people when they decide to move. So today we will be talking about the big M: money, 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 money. Okay, so what we're gonna be talking about as it pertains to money is the fact that immigration is it's an expensive endeavor, right? But if you're like me, who when I initially moved to Canada, I very mistakenly thought that it would be that, like, I thought the economic environment was similar to the United States. So I was very shocked when I realized that food cost as much as it did. And so that's just something that I thought I was prepared for, but I really wasn't. And so it led me to, to think about what else can people find themselves unprepared for when they take on this journey. And so I'm gonna give you a couple of tips for things that you need to be looking out for, and things that you need to make sure that you have locked down pat when you're doing this thing, because it's not an easy road, right? So I'm gonna be giving you a couple of tips, and I'm not a financial services provider. This is not financial advice. This is a jumping off point for you to do some research. If you hear anything that you maybe don't understand or you didn't know before, it's just a starting off point. So find yourself a licensed financial professional if you want to find out more and to make a plan for yourself and something like that, right? All I do is I tell stories with numbers. I'm not on that side of the fence, okay? I also want to make another disclaimer that the information and the tips that I'll be providing are for financially disciplined people, okay? If you have to be honest with yourself. If you are not that, then this may not be for you. And I won't know who you are. Nobody else can tell you who you are. You just have to be honest with yourself. Okay? Now that that's out there, let's begin. Tip number one is to shop bank accounts. When you're moving, you'll see it on every newcomer package that you'll need to start bank accounts, you'll need to move the money that you have back home and all of that. But what does it mean when you get here? One of the things that you need to be cognizant of is that different banks have different benefits. So for example, there are banks who understand that students are coming, and so they will have bank accounts, credit cards that are tailored to students. But you need to think about what it is that you need. Do you want, or can you afford the bank's fees? There are some banks that will give you promotions depending on the type of account that you're getting, and they will say, hey, this account has fees, but there's a promotion, and then you will give you this bank account and you won't pay any fees for the first year or the first 2 years. Is that acceptable to you? Versus maybe another bank that says, okay, this bank account comes with a fee. It might be a lower fee, but you still have to pay this every single month. Versus maybe another bank account that will say, you know what, this bank account has a fee, but if you keep a minimum balance every month, then you will get a rebate for this fee. All of that comes into play. Like, how much are you willing to pay in the way of fees. If you are planning to be sending money back home regularly, does this bank offer it? Can you do it online through your bank account? If you can, what are the fees involved? Are you willing to pay that much? Next thing I mentioned is credit cards. Like, when you think about the credit card that you need, right? What do you need in your credit card? Like, are you looking for air miles? Are you looking for cash back? Are you looking for something that's going to give you cash back when you go to buy gas versus when you buy groceries? Like, these are the things that you need to keep in mind. Juggling, what are the annual fees of this card? What is the limit of this card? And I'll get into that a little bit more just to know. So the next tip is credit card. These are usually mentioned together with bank accounts. One of the first things you need to do when you go to Canada is to get a bank account, and you need to get a credit card, because it's one of the easiest ways and the fastest ways to build credit, right? As a new immigrant, you're not going to have any credit history, and Canada is a country that basically operates on credit, much like the USA. And so if you're coming from a background like us in Jamaica, where cash is still pretty much king, you will need to adjust your habits. I don't know about you, but for example, in Jamaica, when I had a credit card, I used it a certain way. You're not able to do that here, and so you need to learn the rules if you're going to make sure that you are set up for success. One of the things that you need to concern yourself with is, how much credit is this bank willing to offer me? When you get a credit card, you'll have to have something known as your credit limit. What is this number? Is it enough? Why do you need to know whether or not it is enough? Because in Canada, even though you may be extended credit, you can't just take the credit and use it, right? I mentioned, how using the credit card differs country to country. In Jamaica, you have a credit card, you buy something, you pay it back, and you don't worry yourself. As long as you know that you're paying back your credit card, you're good to go. Here, there's something called the utilization rate. And the utilization rate in good standing is 30% or less, which means that they will extend you a certain amount of credit, but you're only expected to use 30%. And if at any point you use more than that, then it signals that you're in financial distress. Weird, right? I know. But right, stay with me. If this card from this bank is going to be the only card that you have, it means that at all times you're going to have to worry about your utilization rate. If the bank is only willing to give you a credit limit of, let's say, $500, 30% of that $500 is only $150. Will you be able to cover all the things that you need to cover within a month for $150? If the answer to that question is no, you can still get the card, but you're gonna have to do a little bit more work. You now need to concern yourself with the closing date. So there's a date each month that your statement closes, and then they'll tally up all the purchases that you made, and they will give you basically an amount that you owe. This is the number that you need to keep below $150. But there's something else. You also need to concern yourself with, when is this balance being reported? So for example, if it's being reported after the statement closes, then okay. But if, let's say, it's being reported a day, 2 days before the statement closes, then you need to make sure that that balance is at $150 before that date. I know it's confusing. I hope you're following along with me, but that is why it is important to figure out if the credit that you're being extended by the credit card of the bank that you use is important. Here's how to find your utilization rate. Pop out a calculator, and you take the number that is the credit limit, whether it is $500, whether it is $10, whether it is $1,000, and then you times it by 0.3. That represents 30%. Whatever number you come up with, that number is 30% of that credit card's limit, and that is the number that you need to stay well below. Now, remember something else. If you have one card that is $500 and another card that is $1,000, while you do have credit of $1,500 available to you, you can't just add them together and say, I'm just gonna use 30% of this number. So for example, you can't just add them together and say, I'm just gonna use 30% of this number. So for example, the card that is $1,000, utilization rate would be $300. That is the max that you want. For the $500 card, it is $150. You can't go and spend $450 on the $1,000 card and say, oh well, I'm still under, you know, the utilization rate, because really you're not. On that particular card, the $1,000 card, it will report that you have a higher utilization rate. So you have to maintain it per card. Make sense? I hope so. Also remember that if that's what you need, nothing is stopping you from getting a multiple card from multiple financial institutions. I would say keep it around 2 cards, maybe 3 if you feel pushy, but there's something else that you need to consider as well, because while you want to concern yourself with building your credit, only having a credit card is not going to do it. Number 3 is about credit diversification, aka debt. Where diversification comes in is a creditor is looking at your finances. If they see that you have one credit card that you pay off every month on time and the utilization rate is low, I mean, that's not really saying much. What they're looking for is really evidence that you are responsible, which means if you had more credits, you would pay it back responsibly, right? So this is where that diversification comes in, and you could do that by getting a mortgage, getting a car payment. You know what I'm saying? You just need to make sure that you have a different kind of credit. So the credit card is called revolving credit. So that is, you have the money available to you every month, you use it and you pay it back, and you use it and pay it back. Another type of credit would be an installment credit, basically where you get a loan and then you pay back a certain amount each month. So that is different from the revolving credit, and that constitutes some type of diversification. One great way to do that is buying a car. As a new immigrant, depending on where you live and what your lifestyle is like, one of the purchases that you are looking to make fairly quickly may be a car. A lot of people have a strategy that they use, which is that they decide that they don't want a car payment. I'd much rather save up a chunk of money to get like a cheaper car, and then that is something that I don't have to think about, which is a valid strategy. But since we're talking about personal finance and how you can build up your credit, let's explore a different approach. You can strategize all the way back to before you move. So once you know for sure that you're moving to Canada and you have a date that you need to travel by, what you can do is try to line up your move with the spring or the early summer. What that does is it gives you a little bit of time to look for a job and so on before the winter problems hit. Now it might still be cold in the spring depending on where you're going, but you at least have several months to maybe look for a job to stabilize in some way, and then that can give you a little bit better footing than if you're outside in the cold where the snow basically a sting off your face. Once you have a job, then you can finance the car. Now, why am I telling you to finance the car? Because building credit, like the car is something that you need, you're going to get one anyway, why not make it work for you? So what you can do is you can get this car loan, and then you can, if you wait a few months, you're more likely to be in a job, and then you will, you know, feel a little bit better about those monthly payments. So you don't have to put anything down. One thing you have to remember is that because you have no credit, you're likely going to get a higher interest rate. If you just consider it a cost of your settling in, then it shouldn't be an issue. But if you have an issue with that, then this strategy might not be for you. Another thing that you could potentially do is, if you, let's say, are worried about the payments, you could take that money that you would have spent on an older car, like maybe, I don't know, how much do you spend on an older car, like $10,000-$15,000, whatever the case may be. If you put that money aside and use it to pay those car payments in monthly installments, then you sort of balanced yourself a little bit, and so the money is going to work for you instead of just, you know, you just hand it off and that's that. Another plus is when you finance that car, you're likely to get a newer car. I'm not saying get a 2025 or 2024 something, but you can get something a little bit newer so that you don't have to contend with potential mechanical issues that may be even hidden. Because sometimes when you're buying that piece of car, you're buying it cash and you're buying it from a little man that's selling someone marketplace, versus if you got something from a dealership that is more likely to have been serviced or checked or something like that. It's not foolproof, but I know that for me, I did not want to concern myself with what potential hidden issues a car would have had. What you can do is ask them to give you a longer term. So a longer term means smaller payments. Take the longest term that they will give you, and then you pay for a couple of years, so maybe 2 or 3 years with the car that you have, and then you pay it off. If you know, you feel like carrying the loan to term is not something that you want to do, you might want to change your car by then or whatever, but that's also a strategy that you can use. Take the longer term, the payments would be smaller, and then once you get to maybe 2, 3, 4 years, whenever you feel like you're stable enough, then you can simply get a newer car or pay off that car and then do have no car payment whatsoever. It's all up to you, but just some ideas for perspective. But this, I think that buying a car is one of those tools that you can make work for you if it is that you find yourself in need of more taxes and benefits. You should be filing your taxes your very first year in Canada. Even if you move in December and you never have a chance for work, file your taxes. Now, you may owe money when you report your worldwide income or whatever the case, but there is a benefit to filing your taxes. So one of those benefits is that you gain contribution room in tax deferred accounts and tax sheltered accounts. Okay? So for example, the TFSA, the tax free savings account, the RRSP, a registered retirement savings plan account, or the FHSA, the first home savings account. Now, you don't have to be any good at doing your taxes yourself. I would personally suggest that you do some reading and try to learn, even if you're going to pay somebody to do it for you. I would recommend that you still read up on it and try to get some knowledge, so at least you can have an idea of what you should be doing, even if you know that this is not your portion or your ministry. It asks you the questions and prompts you along, and so after kind of gain an understanding what you should be reporting and what it should look like. I didn't mean to give you a whole that kind of class, but in conclusion, file your taxes, claim your benefits, use up the tax deferred and tax sheltered accounts. You need it as an immigrant. I was to be honest with yourself. When you decide to move, look at where it is you're going and compare that to what's in your bank account. You're dead set on moving to Vancouver, and the research says that your savings will last 3 months there. It's likely to last more like 2 or 1.5. That is a decision that you have to consciously make. That maybe that same amount would last you 6 months in somewhere in Nova Scotia. But of course, it is up to you. But you should try to be honest with yourself about how far your savings are going to get you, and consider that A lot of people think that I'm gonna land in Canada and I'm gonna get a job within, you know, a month. And what if it takes you a year? Are you prepared for that? What if it takes you 6 months? Are you prepared for that? I mean, I know that the government's website gives you a minimum and they say, oh, you need to have this much money, but I would encourage you to have double what they said you should have. I'm just gonna be honest. The amount that is on that website is like, oh, this is the minimum, and I feel like we tend to forget the word minimum when they say that. And as soon as you come, you realize it is expensive. Even in the not so expensive areas, groceries and things like that, and just clothes and shoes and, you know, real everyday items that you maybe think, if you've ever been to the US especially, then you think, oh, that wouldn't cost that much. It does. In Canada it does. So make sure that you're prepared for that. Make sure that you're honest with yourself about how far your savings will get you. Now, those are my tips. I hope that they are useful to somebody to get you off on the right start when you land and when you're, you know, going off on your journey, because it's not easy to take up your life and move it to another country. Trust me, I know. But I hope this information was helpful. If you found it valuable, let me know what tips you didn't know and that you liked, and what you're taking away to talk to your financial professional about. Or, you know, just tell me what you did in the comments. I'm sure other people would like to know that made your transition a bit easier in the financial aspect of it. That is all for today, and I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye.